Okay. I know that you just got rushed out of the main session. And so we're just going to give maybe another 30 seconds or so for people to get into our session and get logged in. As you're getting logged in, if you'll go ahead and just add your name and your organization in the chat, that just gives us a good idea of who's in the room with us. Always helpful to see who we're talking to. Awesome. All right, it does look like people joining has slowed down a little bit. And since we are recording, I'm going to go ahead and get going so that we can stay on top of our schedule for today. So again, if you've just logged in, I'm going to ask you to put your name and your organization in the chat so we can see who's with us. If at any time you struggle with either hearing or seeing, just put a message in the chat, or I also invite you to unmute yourself and just let me know, like, hey, something happened and I can't see anything. We are recording. This session is geared to student org members who have the responsibility of planning events or who are interested in best practices for planning events. So to get started, I'll introduce myself. I'm Kelly Carpenter. I am the Assistant Director of Leadership in the Office of Student Activities. And you might be wondering, why would the Assistant Director of Leadership be the one doing Events 101? Well, I happen to have about 15 years of experience in event planning, working specifically with student organizations. I've advised everything from a campus activities board to a couple special interest organizations, as well as some honor societies, and have been responsible for campus-wide programming in the past. And so what I'm going to be presenting to you is really what I consider to be best practices. So what we're talking about is general event planning for today. We are also going to do a deep dive specifically into the TU entertainment contract that you all must use. But what I will tell you is if you are the person in your organization whose responsibility it is to plan the events, you really should also consider attending the ECS presentation that will be in the next session. We coupled the two together on purpose so you could hear from me for some general best practices for organizations, and then you could move into ECS to talk specifically about campus policies, reservations, all the nuts and bolts of things here at Towson. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Questions at any time in the chat are fine. I am going to move quickly through the material so that we can have time at the end to also field any questions. So let's get started. Best practices. When it comes to event planning, you really want to make sure that you have goals for your events. You shouldn't just be doing events for the sake of, hey, we want to do something. And so in thinking about what are the goals of our events, there are 4 questions that you can ask yourselves and you can ask your organization. The first thing is, what is it? Essentially, what are we trying to do? Are we looking to fundraise? Are we looking to build awareness of what our organization does? Do we want to build community? What is the purpose of our event? From there, move into why us and why now? This is often a skipped question that organizations sort of miss, but connecting the purpose of the event to your group is super important. Sometimes you'll have a member who comes to you and says, I really want to have this event. I really want to do headphone disco because it's fun and it would be great. But if it has nothing to do with the purpose of your group, if you can't answer why us and why now, you really want to consider adjusting the event to make sure that it makes sense for your organization. You then want to ask yourself, what do you want the attendees to receive by attending? So the people who are coming to your event, what's in it for them? They're going to ask themselves the question, what's in it for me, when deciding if they're going to come to your event or not. So make sure that you have that answered and that you've thought through what the purpose is for them. What will they receive by coming? And at the same time, the rest of your organization members, what will they gain, by running the event with you, by having this be a part of your organization? So again, the what's in it for me. When you're planning an event, when you're running an event, you're going to need help. No one can do it alone. So you have to be able to think about both sides of the people who are coming and the people who are helping you run the event. What is the benefit? Once you have these things defined, you really should put them in writing somewhere. So whether that's written down, whether that's, just saved in your phone, but have them somewhere that you can review them often. And as you move through the decision-making process with these goals, keep going back to them. Review back to your goals every time you make a big decision. We've answered these 4 things. Is it going to match? Is it going to be consistent and continue? So the next thing is planning timelines. And this is honestly where a lot of student organizations struggle, professionals struggle. When planning an event, it's never as easy as you think it is. There's always tasks that you forgot about, or it just takes longer. So some things to remember. The larger the event, the more time you need to plan it. You need to stay organized. No matter what, staying organized is going to help you tackle all the many things, all the little details of the events. You can use any type of organization tool that works for you and your group. So maybe it's, shared document lists, or maybe it's using actual task apps, whatever works for you, but just make sure that it's a consistent format that everyone has access to. Definitely consider your TU requirements. Again, that ECS section next is going to be incredibly helpful with this. These are things like reservation deadlines, the policies on campus that dictate what you can and cannot do. And then more importantly, remember that you are a student first. So your workload and capacity as a student should come into consideration in developing your timeline. How much can you and all the other students who are helping you reasonably achieve each week? And then make sure that you have connected to all of your resources for detailed help. There's a lot of ways that Towson has put resources out for student organizations on the website, on Involved at TU. You can also come into the Office of Student Activities for coaching help from myself and any of the members of our team. But the one thing that I want to teach you today for planning your timeline is backwards design. So if you're not familiar with this, it's basically a way that you can develop your timeline starting with all the things that have to be done. A lot of organizations will immediately, first thing that they'll do, they'll say, okay, we want to have an event and we're going to have it on February 20th. And so February 20th is the day of our event. Now let's get started. And then it becomes super stressful. They can't get everything done. They realize they've missed some deadlines for things and everything's crunched up. So for best practices, flip it. First, obviously, start with those event goals, get those decided. Then do an exercise where you consider all of the decisions, the different deadlines, the tasks that have to be accomplished. Write it down on a list and figure out how much time each of those things are going to take. Working backwards with the day of, the week before, and so forth. So what would we have to do the day of the event? What will we have to do the week of the event? What will we have to do the week before the event? And then keep going backwards. When you have a full list, when you feel like, okay, we're really solid, these are all the things that we would have to do and the order in which we would need to do them, you then count the weeks or days to determine how long you will need to properly plan the event. That's how you then pick your day of the event. You set your timeline based on, we establish that it's going to take us 4 weeks to get everything done, hit all of the deadlines and all of the restrictions. And I would suggest even add another buffer, throw a couple more days in there for something that comes up unexpectedly, and then pick your date far enough out that you can do everything on your planning timeline without it becoming incredibly stressful. That's the backwards design model. And that helps you also when you're looking at reservations. As you know, space on campus is very tight. And so giving yourself more time to get a reservation request in there to find open space is going to be helpful. Once you have your timeline, you're going to need, again, to get some help. I do suggest committees for events. And a committee can be as small or as large as your organization needs it to be. But there are some best practices with the committee. So first, it's that timeline. Make sure that you've developed the strong timeline. And in doing so, it will also help you to identify how many people you need in order to accomplish everything. You don't want anyone on your event planning committee to be super stressed out because their load is too heavy. Remember, they're a student too. So think about capacity. Once you have the individuals on your committee, consider assigning specific roles. Give people, don't just every time you meet assign things out, but give them an area to be responsible for. So some examples are things like financials, logistics, the marketing, the kind of bigger buckets of each program. And people love titles. So this is just the best practice. It helps for their resume also. You can make it as fun or as serious as you want it to be. If you want them to be the chips and dip guru, that's fine. But if you want them to be the logistical support manager, great, go for it. But give them something that they can attach to the work that they're doing. And then, depending on, again, how large the event is, it also helps them with their learning and development and something they can later on refer to if they're applying for another position. When you are delegating tasks out, it's always a good idea to allow for choice in terms of what people will be given. Rather than assigning, delegating looks like coming up with a list of the things that need to be done and then asking your committee who would like to do what, who has a skill that they would like to use, or who has a skill they're trying to develop that could take something off of the list. It doesn't always work that easily. Sometimes you have to assign someone, and typically there's a task that no one wants to do. So you might have to directly ask someone to take it up. But when you do allow for a choice in most things, people are more likely to pick up the things they don't want to do, as well as something that they do want to do, because you've let them pick something they want to spend time on. When you are assigning tasks or delegating, either way, you do need to be specific and always have a deadline. Oftentimes, drama in a group comes from members waiting on other members to do something. And what we find out is that frequently they weren't specific and they didn't give a deadline up front. So that individual was working on their own timeline, thinking they had plenty of time, didn't realize they were stressing other people out. You also want to have your group, your committee agree upon a communication method. So whether that's a group me chat, whether it's a text group, whatever it is, make sure everyone is aware, everyone has access, and everyone is included. When it comes to decisions for the committee, I'd like you to consider it this way. Major decisions, big decisions about the event should be made by the committee. There should be a discussion, there should be room for multiple points of view, and then a collective decision made. They should not be made by a single individual when it's a major decision. At the same time, minor decisions should and can be made by individuals, allowing them to have some autonomy in the planning process, some buy-in, some ability to say, this was my responsibility and here's what I decided. As a group, you may even have to go through what those are and come to an agreement to say, these are the things we're going to decide together, and these are the things we're going to allow our different chairs or whatever titles you give them to take on for themselves. And then very early in the process, meeting number one of your committee, normalize asking for help. We know that too often students overload their plates and you commit to more than you can do. And when normalizing asking for help isn't done, you feel a sense of, I have to do this, I've been asked to do this, it's all on me, it's all on my plate. From the beginning, if you are the event chair, make sure that the whole group collectively knows we want you to ask for help. If you're not able to hit a deadline, if things have gotten crazy for you, talk to us, allow someone else to jump in and help you out, make it a normal thing. And then finally, make sure your committee is having fun. No one wants to be on a committee that's miserable, fighting, or agitated every time that they get together. Don't make every meeting boring. You want to find some balance. You also don't want to waste people's time, but just make sure that it's enjoyable to be a part of this planning committee. A lot of ways are, making sure that you start each meeting with some social time. You check in with each other. You even take a break in the middle of the planning session and do something social together. If you're meeting, let's say, on a weekly basis, make one of your meetings a theme meeting. Let everybody come in their pajamas. Anything that just kind of breaks up the seriousness of a planning meeting and lets it be a little bit fun for everybody. Next, we're going to talk about budgeting. So budgeting is hugely important. If any of you have been in an organization who has had a meeting or, an event for the first time ever and didn't budget, you'll know that typically By the time the event rolls around, you have run out of money, you spent too much money, or everything kind of falls apart. So budgeting is incredibly important as part of the planning process early on. And if you follow the slide here, there's an order in which you do it. So the first thing that you do in budgeting is that you need to figure out what your available funds are. So how much money do you actually have to run this event? You need to review it, you need to confirm it, and you need to total it all together. Now, those funds could be your organization money. It could be sponsorships or donations. It could include collaborations if you're working with another organization and they've said, we'll give this much. But you want to get all of that together before you start making decisions so you know where you're starting. Once you have your available funds down, and I do recommend a good spreadsheet, subtract a buffer. Take 5% of the total and set it aside and don't touch it. That 5% is your emergency funds. It's the, oh my gosh, we forgot about something, we have to buy XYZ, or we got charged for something afterwards because, this happened, that happened. It's your emergency expenses. Then that gives you your new total. From there, you're going to gather quotes for every expense. Quotes are the request for information without actually buying. And so that can be anything from just going on Amazon and finding out how much things are to, let's say you're working with Tiger Hospitality and you're ordering catering, asking questions, asking how much will it cost if we did, 15 pizzas and 2 drink dispensers, what does it look like? Get them all down in writing. Don't forget about shipping costs. Ask if there are any hidden costs like fees if you're working with an external vendor. Put that all into, again, I recommend a shared spreadsheet. Put it somewhere, though, that everyone has access to it that's on the committee. And at that point, you're not making any purchases yet. You've just gathered how much will everything cost. You then go to the committee to look at the budget. And you're going to do 4 things. First, you're going to prioritize your expenses. These are the things we absolutely have to pay for. This can't be an event. So if we're trying to have bingo night, we need to have a space, we need to have bingo cards, and we need to have prizes. So prioritize the things that you have to have. Put everything in order. Then reduce. If you have overspent, if your quotes equal more than your available funds, reduce expenses. That may be that you choose something cheaper. It may be that if it's food, you cut down on how much of it you're getting, but you can make some reductions. If you have to, the third step is eliminate. So within the committee, someone may point out like, oh, we really don't need this. We don't need to rent lights for this event. We can do this event without doing that. And then finally, the committee is going to approve the budget. They're going to say, yes, we agree to all of this. This makes sense. During this conversation, you definitely want to ask other committee members who weren't a part of the gathering quotes work to suggest any expenses you may not have considered. Always keep an open mind that someone has a point of view where they're going to catch something for you that you didn't think of. Ego should not play a role when it comes to event planning. Be open to everyone pitching in and helping think through everything. Once that budget is approved, now you're ready to move. So now it's time to make purchases, place orders, complete contracts. The biggest thing here is make sure that you're following the financial policies for TU student organizations. If you are at all confused, don't know those, that's what the treasurer's workshop is for. That's also where our office can come in and help you out. Chris is a wonderful resource here if you have questions about how do we spend money following TU policies. As you're making your purchases, confirm all of your order details so nothing takes you by surprise. And don't forget to ensure that delivery happens before the event. One thing to know, if you're getting something delivered directly to campus from, let's say, Amazon, you need to tack on at least an extra day, if not 2, to what it says on Amazon, because when it arrives on campus, it has to be processed by the post office or by central receiving. And that tacks on at least an extra 24 hours, if not 2 days. So give yourself, again, that buffer so no one's stressed out and stalking the post office the day of your event, hoping to get your package. And then make sure that after the event, You record all of those expenses in detail, the actual cost. It can be on that same spreadsheet where you put all of your quotes. It's just the next column of this is what it actually cost us. If it's the same, great. If it ended up being a little bit higher, that's okay too, as long as you could cover it. But you need to make sure that all the bills are paid. If you've raised any funds, that those are deposited appropriately using the financial policies for Towson, and that it's done immediately. And then you want to make sure that you're providing a report back to the full organization, not just the committee, but the full organization. There should be financial transparency when you're holding events for your student organization. And my final tip on budgeting is don't be overconfident on ticket sales. A lot of times, we don't have all the money that we need, but we say, well, we're going to sell tickets and that's going to pay for everything. So we're fine. No matter what happens with your event, the bills get paid. So if your event totally bombs, you still owe that money. Don't be overconfident that you're going to make the ticket sales. If you do, and you end up with extra money, that's never a problem, but the bills have to be paid either way. We're now moving into risk management. So we've talked about planning, we've talked about goal setting, we've got our committee running, we've figured out a budget. Now we need to think about preparing and detailed planning for your event to avoid any unfortunate situations. These can be situations like people getting hurt, that's an issue, all the way to we're just unprepared and don't have something that we needed for this event. So there's a couple of things here that you want to consider. And again, take your committee through this. Make sure you've got multiple people thinking through. So first of all, review your location restrictions and the campus policies. I can't say this enough. Again, the ECS session is going to be hugely helpful for going through the different campus policies that you need to pay attention to. Then consider your check-in procedures and attendance tracking. How are you going to keep track of, let's say, how many people are in the room to know when you are at capacity? How are you going to know if you have enough chairs set up for everyone if you're not tracking how many people came in the door in the first place? How are you going to make sure that the people who are in the room are the ones who are supposed to be in the room? Let's say if they had a ticket, are you going to do wristbanding? Are you going to do something at the door? So you need to consider how you're going to manage that. Then how will the rules of the event be communicated and enforced? And rules is a really strong word. It may just mean how the event is working, what a person coming to the event needs to know, what they can and can't do, how they participate in the event. But how are you going to communicate that? And what's the plan when someone does something that isn't part of what they're supposed to do? And again, that could be, as extreme as we have to call to UPD because something crazy is happening versus someone's just not following the rules that we set up for how our activity is going to go. How is the committee going to enforce it? And then again, this is a real basic one, but are the activities in the space free of safety concerns? Do we have, extension cords going across the room that people are going to trip on and fall? Those type of risks you want to make sure you're managing really well too. It's always a good idea to take a walk through your whole event space before doors open, just looking for things like that. Did we leave something out that shouldn't be out that someone can trip on? And then if money is part of the event, so if it's a fundraiser, if you're taking in money in any way, what are your money handling plans? Be very thorough in not only what the plan is for the event itself, but definitely remember your financial policies, compare what you're doing with the financial policies for student organizations to make sure that you are in compliance. If you are at all concerned or you think, well, we have this idea, we're not sure if we're following financial policies, if we do this, again, Chris is a wonderful resource that you can reach out to and just ask these questions, as well as the SGA Finance. You can send an email to SGA Finance to ask these type of questions. And then for the event itself, establish a chain of command and communication plan for during the event. So when something goes wrong, even something as simple as we ran out of drinks, who do we tell? Who's the person that's going to solve that problem in the middle of the event? And how are we communicating with them? You definitely don't want to be, again, stressed out at your event, running around like crazy. If you run out of drinks, you don't want 5 people running off to get drinks and then all of a sudden no one's working the event. So be organized in what's going to happen at the event. And then finally, have an event kit on site with extra supplies. So the basics, things like tape and blank paper and markers in case you have to make a quick sign for something. But then also, if your event has any specific supplies, let's say the event is a paint and sip, have extra paintbrushes, have some extra paper plates for putting paint on, extra cups for water cups, anything that's specific, have it set aside in an event kit on the side as just like, these are our backups, these are the extra. I do absolutely recommend, once you've gotten through all of this point, this could be something fun that you do because you can have fun and be a little extreme with it if you want to, but have your committee play worst case scenario. So think through the event, what could possibly happen, and how can we prepare for it? What can we do to make sure that we're totally ready for this event to go smoothly? So next is accessibility. The big question here to ask yourselves is, can every person who wants to and is included reasonably participate at every level of the event? Have we done everything we can to accommodate anyone being able to access our event? So on the screen are just a few of the things to consider, things like dietary options, things like alternative formats for printed materials, the physical space layout. If it's a very physical activity, have you come up with an alternative way for people to participate so that no one has to be turned away because they want to participate and you haven't made it accessible? There are more than just this list. There are many, many more, too many to talk about today. My suggestion to you is, as you're doing your event planning, reach out to the Accessibility and Disability Services Office for a consultation. Schedule a time with them. Make sure that you contact them with ample notice, because a consultation for a student organization event will not take priority over an individual student who needs their services. So give them plenty of time to schedule a meeting with you, but walk through, this is what we're planning on doing for our event. Do you see anything that we could make better? Is there anything that's not accessible? They are happy to help you kind of talk through and work through the details of your event to ensure that all students can participate. And then we get to marketing. Marketing is one of the areas that is usually where people's minds go to first. We say, okay, great, we want to have an event. We're going to do it on this day. Let's make a flyer. And as you can see, there's a lot of steps between when you start and when you get to the marketing. But at the very top of the screen here, you see there are 4 things that student organizations often do wrong with their marketing. Either they completely forget to market the event. So we all know it's happening and we expect a big turnout. And no, we didn't market it at all. So we're the only ones there. Late marketing, we throw it up on Instagram 2 hours before the event is actually going to start. And yeah, some people show up, but not as many as could. Incomplete marketing, throwing a post up that has the name of an event, but not the date or the time, or maybe it has the date and the time, but it doesn't have the location. How are people going to find the event if they're being invited to something? That's something that you need to think through. And then also just boring. If your marketing is boring, people are going to breeze right over it. They're not going to care. They're not going to look at it. So make sure that you're being creative, that it also makes sense, that your marketing is not confusing about what you're doing, and that it's connecting to the audience that you're hoping to have come out to your event. When you are doing marketing too, it's important for you to use all of the methods at your disposal, not just the ones that you would personally pay attention to. This is an exercise in not only accessibility, but also in just understanding that every student, every person is different in their preferences of how they receive information. If you want to get the most out of your marketing, the more places you put your message, the more people will see it. So while you may say, I don't read the TU Today email, we know that there are students who do. So put it in there. Obviously, most of us use social media. Most of us are posting things on Instagram, which is great. But there's so many more places that you can do things. Involved at TU, your event should live there. There's a ton of great resources on Involved at TU. And it also just gives you a record of what happened when for your organization. Events.towson.edu or events at TU is another place where it's a campus-wide calendar. That is where you put events for them to flow into the TU Today daily email. So I know on the screen it says events with the @ sign, but it's events.towson.edu. And then I know it's limited on campus where you can hang flyers, but residence halls do still accept flyers. And there are still some bulletin boards in stairwells of garages and different places. So flyers are an option. Digital signage in many of the buildings is an option for you. Next event means at whatever event you're holding, you take time to promote what your organization is doing next. And that can be anything from if it's a situation where there is an opportunity to make announcements. So if it's an event where there's a microphone or there's a DJ who can say, hey, next week we're doing this, come back, here's the date, the time, and location. Or if it's something where you can put up a poster, you can use a screen and put it up on the screen. But don't forget, those people have already come out to see you once. They're probably going to want to come back. So tell them what you're doing next. And then finally, handouts, quarter pages. When you're tabling, you can give these out. And there's a lot of places that you can do handouts within your own groups so that people have something to take away and they don't have to go find the information again. Obviously, you want to be creative. You want to use your networks. This is an opportunity for once the marketing is created, expand beyond the committee. So if you are a very large organization and you have a committee planning the event, when the marketing is finished, make sure you share it with the full organization and you tell everyone in the organization, now go share it. Share it with the other organizations you're a member of, share it with your friends, share it on your social. The more people that share it, it's like a spider web, it just keeps going out. And finally, as recognized student organizations, you do have the ability to use TU branding. Just make sure that you're using the branding guidelines. Follow them carefully, but there's a number of resources online. Just at towson.edu/brand, you're going to find the guidelines, you're going to find the downloadable options that are available to you. And so read through that if you're interested in using like the cartoon doc or anything like that. And then here's some other things to consider. So first of all, sustainability. What can you do to make your event more green? Are you being wasteful? Are there ways that you could do things that are more purposeful, that you're using reusable supplies, you're investing in quality things rather than purchasing disposable decorations? How can you be more sustainable with your event? Collaboration. Not only, we often think about collaboration in terms of who can give us stuff, like we don't have enough money, who can we collaborate with that has some money? But reverse it and think about who else might benefit from working together on this. So if we're a club and let's say we're doing an event that is specifically related to sustainability, let's look at the other student organizations that are also related to sustainability. Reach out to them, say, hey, we're doing this thing. Do you want to do it with us? Do you want to be a part of this collaboration? Next is recognition. It is very important that when people invest time and energy in helping you plan an event, that they are recognized for those efforts. So how are you as the event planner going to recognize your crew? What are you going to do to say thank you, to make them feel special, to let them know how much you appreciate all the time and energy they put into it? And then little details. What are the things that are going to make this event more memorable for the people who attended? What is the next step that you can take to make this something that they never forget, that's awesome, that they want to keep coming back to your organization for? And then finally, ask yourselves the question, are you representing Towson University and your organization well with the choices that you make? Is the event in alignment with your organization's values? Are you making decisions that shine a positive light on your organization? If you answer no to that question for any reason, that is definitely an aspect that you need to take back to the committee and say, we have to talk about this. We've realized we're making a decision that doesn't really benefit us. We're not representing our organization well. Let's make a change before it's too late. At that point, you're at the event. You've done all the planning. It's here, it's happening. So during the event, these are best practices. First of all, up here in the corner, if everyone working the event is miserable, do you want to stay? If you go to an event and you can tell everybody who's putting on the event is fighting, there's drama, they don't want to be here, you don't want to stay either. Or maybe you want to stay just to watch the drama, but the event is ruined, right? So make sure that that doesn't happen. And this is how you can do it. First of all, staying organized. And staying organized looks different for everyone. So make sure that that's early communication within the committee and that everyone is on board with the same style of organization. If you are a very type A person and the rest of your committee is not, be prepared to give a little and not drive people crazy with the organization. If you're a color coder list maker like I am, make sure everybody's on board with that before you push it onto them. Communicate really well, communicate often before the event, during the event, especially. And then have fun, be positive, be happy that you're there, be excited about what you are doing. Make sure that you're respecting the facility. If other people see you disrespect the facility, so will they. And then you find yourself in a problem at the end where either there's just a giant mess to clean up or you're facing some fees because you've literally destroyed the facility. You can use the golden rule of leave things better than when you arrived. So again, that goes back to cleaning up, putting things away, packing things up appropriately. Even if you walked into a room on campus and it was kind of disheveled and the furniture was everywhere, when your event is done, put the furniture back appropriately, slide the chairs in, line the tables back up, make it ready, be helpful to our facilities folks. Praise work that is well done publicly. If members of your committee are doing a great job, give them a shout out. But if you have to provide correction as the leader of the group, make sure you do that privately. Pull someone aside. Inevitably, it happens. Someone's made a decision. They're doing something that you really need them to not do because it's creating a problem. They're not aware of it. They just need to be told. Don't do that in front of other people. That can be embarrassing, and then they're going to react defensively, and then you've created that drama at the event. And then make sure that you're gathering feedback from the attendees. That's as simple as just going around asking, are you guys having a good time? Or do you like this? Do you like that? How was the food? All the way to if you want to do a formal assessment form, you ask everybody to complete a form online. That's something you can do through Involved at TU. And again, our office can help you with those resources if you're not sure how to do that. Then the event happens and it's over and you've worked so hard. All you want to do is take a nap. But I'm sorry, it's not over yet. So now there are some things that you have to do after the event. First and foremost, pay the bills. Make sure every bill is paid, following the financial policies, using your money correctly, all those wonderful things, but make sure your finances stay clean. Then send thank yous. So that can be a thank you text out to your committee. If you brought in external people, let's say you had an event and you asked the chair of your academic department to stop by and speak to everybody. Send them a thank you. Send them an email, do a handwritten note. Anybody who went out of their way to help you to make sure that this event was a success, make sure that you thank them. Then review and assess how the event went. Did you, again, go back to those goals that you initially wrote? Did you meet them? All 4 of them? Did you hit every goal? If you did, fantastic. Write down how you did it. If you didn't, write down what happened. Write down where the missteps were, where the blind spots were, what went wrong. Those notes get saved for the next time that you have an event, either a general event, or let's say you want to create an annual event. This is something that's going to happen every semester, every year. The next person who's planning the event is going to appreciate being able to read how it went the last time. What's the one thing you learned the hard way that they could learn the easy way by you telling them? And put those notes somewhere that's accessible for whoever comes after you. And then finally, do a true report back to your organization. After the event ends at your next organization meeting, give a report. How many people came? How much money was raised? If it was a fundraiser, what did we do well? What did we not do so well? Do we plan to do this event again? All of those type of details. That way the entire organization is aware of the outcome of the event, not just the planning committee. Okay, so I told you we're going to do a deep dive into contracts, and I'm looking at the time. We're doing perfectly. So we're going to do this, and then there's going to be time for some questions. So the TU Entertainment Contract is a financial form that must be used by student organizations anytime you are bringing an individual onto this campus to provide entertainment services for your events. That can be anything from a DJ, it could be a performer, It could be a makeup artist. It could be clothing designer. It could be any of those things. It could be an inflatable company that you're bringing them in to have inflatables on campus. This TU entertainment contract is the required form in order to pay for those type of services. You find the form on Involved at TU in the campus links section. So on the homepage of Involved at TU, scroll to the bottom, you'll see an entire section on the right that says campus links. It is one of the links in there. It says TU entertainment contract. The next number 3 is there a guide? Yes, there is. Also, in the campus links on Involved at TU, there is a PDF that is literally a step-by-step guide of how to fill out this form. It goes through in this box, put this, in this box, put that. If you use that guide, that's going to help you ensure that you're filling it out correctly the first time, which, believe me, is a lot easier if you do it that way than trying to just guess on your own. It was created by lawyers. They do not speak student speak. And so it's not necessarily a form that you can look at and just be like, oh yeah, I know what to put in that box. In addition to the contract from the vendor, you will also need to gather a W-9 and proof of insurance. The contract itself goes over what type of insurance they will need to have. So as they are receiving the contract, they'll know what they need to send you when you ask for proof of insurance. When you have the contract completed, again, you're using the guide to fill it out, which has the step-by-step. The contract would be signed by the vendor, which is the person coming on campus, the artist, the DJ, whomever, and not you. You are not a signer of contracts. Your information goes in the contact information boxes. The signature part for the university stays blank. You submit the contract and those additional documentation, the W-9, the proof of insurance. You submit it along with the purchase request form to SGA Finance. It's documentation that you add. Now, again, the Treasurer Workshop can help you with this. SGA Finance can help you with this. You can reach out to Chris for help with this. You can reach out to me for help with this. Pretty much anyone in our office can help you when it comes time. If you're doing an event and you're bringing in external people who you need to pay, we can help you with this. It is incredibly important that you do it in advance. You cannot do a contract after the fact. You cannot bring a performer onto campus and tell them, oh yeah, we'll pay you, and not do this in advance. There are 2 exceptions to this process. The photographers and videographers are not included in this process. There is a completely separate process for photographers and videographers. If you are going to hire in a photographer to come to your event, come to us for help. Go to SGA Finance for help first for that process. It's so unique to just those 2 things that we're not going into it today. And then finally, we've just had this recently happen. What do you do if a vendor refuses to sign the contract? So again, the process is you're going to pull the contract from campus links on Involved at TU. You're going to fill it out with all of the information, all of the details about how much we're paying you, who we're paying. You're going to send it to the vendor. That's their opportunity to read all the legal jargon that has been written by the lawyers saying what they can and can't do on campus, how much insurance they have to have, all of those type of things. If they come back to you and say, we can't sign this contract, we're not signing this, you have to stop right there. You cannot work with that vendor if they will not sign the contract, and you need to be sure to communicate that with them. Okay, if you can't sign this contract, we cannot do business with you. We are not doing business with you. Don't just ignore it and hope that they go away. And more importantly, they don't come to campus. They don't show up at your event and do it anyway. You don't take their merchandise anyway. You stop. You do not continue to work with them if they refuse to sign the contract. This is to protect you as an organization and you as individuals. So again, big points at the bottom. No student can sign a contract. You are the contact information, not the signer. The signer is the people with authority in our office and above. On the form, there's a spot to put your organization name. For some reason, even though it's pretty clear, this gets missed a lot. Make sure you're putting the name of your organization on the form. And then finally, no contract, no payment. So this is a harsh one. It's a harsh reality, but we cannot process payment without a completed contract process. So the second that you're starting to plan an event and you know that it includes external vendors, bringing in, any kind of entertainment opportunities, anything that anybody is bringing onto campus for your organization, you need to start the contract payment. And if you are confused at all, or if you're even just nervous about it, it all makes sense, but you're nervous because you've never done it before, please reach out to us. We are happy to help walk you through this process because we want it to go right for you the first time. We don't want you to have any problems with vendors. We want your events to be successful. So come to us for help the first time that you're doing something like this. All right, I know that was a ton of information, a lot to review. We have just a couple of minutes. I would love to open it up for questions. You are welcome to either unmute yourself and just talk or type in the chat. If you do not have any questions, thank you for attending. You can go ahead and log off and head over to your next session. If you have questions, or if you just want to stick around to see what questions other people ask, you can do so. I'll hang here for a couple more minutes. Thank you all for attending Events 101.